Spera, and this is the iTechGear Weekly, episode number 130. I'm just waiting for y'all to say something stupid. Recorded live Sunday, April 27th, 2025, live from iTechGear Central. As I said, I'm Christopher Spera. This is the iTechGear Weekly, and today we have the usual suspects with us.
And a short wait.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. There you've got those dulcet tones. That's the former contributing editor over Gear Diary and Pocket Now. And, of course, editor here at iTechGear.org. That's Mr. Chris Gavula. How are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you, sir?
Oh.
Enjoying the occasional warm day that we've actually had this week. Won't last, but
no,
hey,
we
get one or two.
No, it won't. But, tis what it is,
Tis what it is. But, yeah, so, doing good.
Awesome. Also, we have the former contributing writer from Gear Diary and currently the host of the Linux Link Tech Show and Living in the Retro Arcade podcast. And, of course, editor here at iTechGear.org, Brother Joe McLaughlin. How are you, sir?
Doing just ducky.
Oh, that bad. Oh, my. I'm so sorry.
And watching NCIS.
I was, well... No, the strength training went great, but then I'm running on the treadmill, and what does Joel do? Hits the fucking Sorry, I didn't swear. The emergency swear button.
Push the button on that one, Joe. Push the button.
The emergency stop button, and I can't just be arsed to complete the workout, so I just stopped.
Oh, dear.
Well,
no big deal.
What are you going to do? And last but never, ever least, the former co-owner of WUGNET Publications and editor here at iTechGear.org, Dr. Mr. Larry McJunkin. How are you, sir?
I am fine. Well, that wait didn't take long, did it?
No.
No. It definitely doesn't take us long.
Oh,
no,
God.
No,
I mean, the four of us are located in four different parts of our wonderful United States of America.
Amen.
I mean, we're sort of together in the middle, if you'll say, but north and south, we're separated. But I don't know about you guys. I am over the weather. It's the end of April. One day I'm in a T-shirt. Next day I'm in a sweatshirt.
Yeah,
it's just, I don't know. It's
I will just say this much, Larry. When you talk about you not waiting long for us to say something stupid, which we're very good at.
Oh yeah,
I think this show ought to come with a guarantee. I'm just saying.
yeah, I do.
Hawkeyes to the left of me, Hoosiers to my right. Here I am.
Well, I was looking over the show notes, and I think we got some good topics tonight. Just looking forward to chatting about them.
We do. And this next one, in the pre-show we were talking about something, and Chris, you said something about this that really just kind of piqued my interest just a little bit more than the why. But the iPhone 17 Slim. All right. May or may not come around, but the iPhone 17 Slim is barely thick enough for its own buttons.
Yeah. Slim or Air or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever they're going to call the dang thing.
Well, yeah, but this thing is supposed to be wafer thin, just wafer thin. Right?
Yeah. That's
according
to
all the fanboys.
Well, this, I mean, why would they, this brings back, hauntings and ghosts of Ben Gates' past,
On 6.
Yeah, but here's the thing, guys. So first of all, this is not the first phone that's come out with this kind of thinness, because we've been seeing this in the foldable space. And quite frankly, as I was saying in the pre-show, I think the whole point of this is as a precursor to see how it behaves so they can prep for a foldable. I really think that's what this is about.
All right. So the question that I have for you then is this: if that is the case, and it may very well be, why can't they do that in a lab?
Oh, I'm sure they can, and I'm sure they have. But you know as well as I do, the real world turns out to usually be very different than the lab.
Sure.
And so I think the idea, but I think the idea too is to get this notion of getting something out there that's a little different than what they've been doing. So I think that it gets some excitement. Look at the press it's gotten already.
Looking at it from another engineering angle, sometimes thin bends better without breaking than thick does. So
that's true as well.
As long as it bends back.
Yeah. But I think the idea, if they in fact release this, because as we always say, and we'll say it again, until we see somebody on stage presenting this thing, it doesn't exist, right? So
till Skinny Timmy is on stage, it don't mean squat.
you can pretend it all you want, but until we see it, we haven't seen it. And I think the idea is to get something out there that offered. They've tried the minis. The minis sort of worked. They didn't work. Nobody gave a crap.
The mini. Had an
a lot of people
iPhone
did,
13 mini,
but not enough people loved it to buy it.
That's true.
And that's
not
what
enough
happened.
people bought it. Yes.
Well, that's my point. Not enough people went out and bought the dang thing. So now it made it 2 years, and it was done.
Couple 3 years, yeah.
Now I think this is just another attempt at, well, gee, if we make it thin, will it be more glamorous? Gee, will it be more sexy? Will it be more, okay. I personally, with a foldable, it's one thing because you got 2 layers of this crap when you put it in your pocket. Now you're going to have 1 layer, theoretically, this thin. Put that in your back pocket and sit on it. What's going to happen?
It's going to bend in half, or at least go ahead and ride
but
the
a lot of people don't
curvature
carry
of
their
your
phone there, so it might appeal to those people. I don't know.
And to be fair, we don't know how much reinforcing is in the side rails if they release this thing. We don't know anything about how the rigidity of this structure.
Well, sure. You don't have no idea about any idea about the engineering.
Until this thing gets out there, I don't have any idea. So we'll,
I do like the thought though that that's just going to show you how one of those panels is going to work in a foldable. I like that idea.
I think that's at least part of what's going on here. That's my thought because we've had, I'm going to call it semi-confirmation that a foldable is theoretically coming down the road. Theoretically, again, we don't until we see it. We haven't seen it, but a lot of people are talking about this, and a lot of people who have good track records are talking about it.
Sure.
So I think they're going down that path, but we'll see. We'll see.
We'll see.
The guy that's leaking this has got a tremendous track record. He really does.
And I think I think there's probably a pretty good chance this is going to happen. But again, my thing is this is not the end of the road. This is a step on a different road than we're thinking. That's my thought.
I wonder how much of the Pro it will incorporate, or will it be more like the SE?
No, I think it's going to be more like the SE because what I'm hearing is things like in all the articles I'm seeing talk about we're going to reduce the capabilities of the camera and some other things like
that.
In
order to get it that compact.
Right? Well, I'm looking forward to that one, but the rest of the Pro I want.
But by the way, guys, this is what happens with most of the foldables too. The cameras are slightly less capable, and they might be wanting, in part, to test the market tolerance for this.
Right.
That may be part of it as well. So we'll see if they're really doing this. Those may be some of the reasons.
Just let me scroll at 120 hertz mega or 120 hertz. That's all I care about.
There you go.
And I'll put the final nail on that is, do people really want something this thin? I personally would not, because I'm like, just make it the same thickness as the old one is. Give me a bigger freaking battery.
That's the thing where I'm at. I would be too afraid that I'm going to put my thumb through the doggone screen while I'm busy holding it, or I'm going to bend it.
But here's my question.
Topic for another time, probably. But in this day and time, with all the car chargers that you lay your phone in your car, if you drive your car, you don't need to ever charge your phone. I mean, mine is at 100% all day long. All I got to do is go to the grocery store and back.
I guess my broader question is, you always see the tech pundits talking about battery life. Let's make it thicker so we have better battery life. But in the reality, in the real world, I don't know. Does the teenage girl bouncing on the street care? She's probably got it plugged in all the time anyway. Every time she stops. So the point I'm getting at is I don't know if that's a broader concern or that's just a tech pundit concern. I don't really know.
Maybe not. Who knows?
I mean, because I'm like Larry. Every time I stop somewhere, if I'm at my desk, the dang thing's in my charger on my desk. If I'm in my car, it's in the charger in my car. I never have a problem with battery. I don't care what device I've had.
And you don't go for runs and you don't go for hikes.
I don't. And I do go for hikes, but not for runs. But you're right.
But
but I mean, even if it's 2 or 3 or 4 hour run or hike, I mean, it's still
it depends.
That's a lot of time.
So, if I'm on an extended hike, I always have a battery bank with me, and I have it.
So you have a battery bank with you. So do you really need your battery on your phone to be better? You got a bank with you. You're going to carry it anyway.
Nice. It would be nice, because
the only problem that I have, I've got a couple of battery banks or MagSafe battery banks
Mm-hmm.
And you stick them on the back of the phone, and they're very, very helpful. They're wonderful things that, I've got a couple that are real slim that are, 5,000 milliamps or whatever.
Sure.
And that's not too bad. Then I've got others that are a lot thicker, that are just over 5,000 milliamps.
But
The problem,
another fact on all this stuff, manufacturing does not follow edge cases. Never
no,
has,
no,
never
it no,
will.
it doesn't. The concern that I would
Just
have though with anything like that is those batteries tend to get pretty hot.
They
All
do.
right.
Oh.
And I would
I
Well,
think
was thinking about
that it's that heat is going to cause problems with the processor and the screen and everything else.
but here's the
yeah.
thing.
yeah, yeah.
We're about to probably change technologies with batteries very shortly here, because we've been using the lithium for quite a while.
Yep.
And what we're getting now into solid state batteries. We're getting into these sodium based batteries
Yep.
Yep.
that all have different characteristics. So a lot of this stuff we're talking about now probably won't be an issue in 5 years or less. So
Yeah,
again,
that's if we can get them shipped to us cheap enough.
well, yeah, there's
the
always that
heat
kind of stuff,
issue.
right?
But here, like for example, this is my Pixel 9 Pro XL. It doesn't have MagSafe built in, but I took care of it with the case. I was thinking about getting a MagSafe battery, but then I thought the heat thing and the fact that when I'm going to really need that is when I'm on the trail, and I don't really want to cook my phone. So
That's the
Yeah.
biggest concern that I have at this point is the heat coming off of those batteries, or any MagSafe kind of a
Well,
product that's going to cook
there's
the
a
phone,
reason you can't put. There's a reason
especially if
you
it's that
cannot
thin.
put them. There's a reason you cannot put them in checked luggage. There's a reason lithium
Yeah.
batteries can't go in checked luggage, because they will heat up sometimes. Even when
Yeah.
you're not in use, they'll heat up sometimes.
Yep.
So you got to
Yep.
be careful with that crap.
Yep.
Absolutely too.
Yeah. Hey, did you guys hear the latest thing that on the tariffs, that there's going to be
this
uh
can change every 5 minutes.
well,
Oh
kind
my
of yes and
goodness.
kind of no, but interestingly enough, Apple Insider, one of our friends over at Apple Insider, are saying that the tariff pause is going to be cut in half for those countries that are not negotiating with the United States,
Like China.
like China. Yeah. It's, it's definitely possible that actually may take place, and I don't know what's gonna happen with all of that stuff. Chris, do you have any idea?
Well, I mean,
Well,
again, I think everybody's got different opinions. I mean, this is one of those things that obviously becomes dangerously political when we have any conversations about them. But
Right.
I personally think the tariff thing is all about market manipulation anyway.
Okay.
So what happens today won't be what happens tomorrow, won't be what happens the day after. I think we're gonna see everybody flip flop on this right and left. And today somebody says boo, so okay, you're bad. We're gonna put tariffs, stronger tariffs on you. And then tomorrow, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that, and it'll be nice. So I think it's all kind of a bunch of BS right now, and it's just a game. And what's it going to do on our prices? I don't know, because the thing they're saying right now with pricing is that not what's going to happen with the tariffs and who's got half length ones and who's got full length ones. It's more about supply chain problems, because once you burp the supply chain, even if you correct it, you have months before it corrects. So here we go, and they're saying by the time we hit midsummer, it's going to
Yeah.
screw us up. So it's going to be anybody's guess right now how that's going to look, I think.
Well, I understand why they're being put in place. I mean, we're paying an outrageous amount of money to just about every other country in the world, for to export and sell our U.S. Made goods in those countries, and yet it's very, very lopsided. We don't necessarily charge them as much as they charge us, and
No,
yet
no,
we're getting raked over the.
yeah, but we're not, because we're getting cheap products in return. That's what we're getting. So it's very misleading to say that, to say what you just said. It's misleading. It's only part of the equation. You're not considering the whole equation. So I think we
I
need to.
understand. I
I think we
understand.
need to we need to be careful because again, I don't think we really know what it means until it means
Sure.
it. Did Timmy dance on the stage yet? I'm sorry, I don't think he
Yeah.
did.
Well, and other things too surrounding this too. Like you just recently had the Nintendo Switch go up for pre-order.
Hmm.
Uh,
Right.
and it's
It did.
449 for the machine itself, 499 with the Mario Kart World bundle, and that's really what it was before the whole tariff mess was announced. So they
Sure.
haven't changed the price
Yeah.
of it. So
So far. But they've
Well,
only made a limited amount, and we're going to be out of those. I think
And
most
Apple
places already
says they're
sold
going to
out.
eat some. Apple said they're going to eat some of this too. So we have
Yeah,
to wait and
exactly.
see. We
So
don't. We
we
don't
don't know
know.
right.
right.
till it
So,
happens.
Apple's
It
also
doesn't happen.
moving. They're going to make more phones in India than they ever have before, because Indians.
or
Yes, that's
in
another thing.
other countries, right? Where
Yep.
the
Right.
tariffs aren't
Yep.
necessarily as high, whether that's India or Brazil or somewhere else, right?
Yep.
They're
Yep.
going to
Yep.
go ahead and
Right.
move the manufacturing around and try to get a and try to avoid some of
Yeah.
those larger tariffs. And like
I
Larry said, they're
believe
gonna
if there's a company on the planet that can avoid the tariffs effectively, it's
it's
Apple. I
probably
believe
Apple.
that.
No, I agree. I agree.
Yep.
Um,
Well, if nothing else, they have the capital to invest in somewhere else if they have to.
Right.
They
true,
can do this.
true.
So we'll see. We'll see where it all goes.
We
Again, I
shall
don't know where
see.
any of
We
this is
shall
going
see.
Well, the 90-day pause began on April 9th, right? And as of today, it's, not even 20 or so days. So we'll see, right?
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
gonna see what happens, and um it's likely going to change. It's likely going to
I
bop
think
around a
so
bit.
too.
All right.
Yep.
And I do think that there's going to be changes in policy based on what we see working or not working. Right. So,
Well, to me, that just says they don't really know what they're doing, and
Right.
they have to wait and see for everything.
well,
They don't really understand what they're doing yet, or
well,
what the
it's
impacts
not,
of what they're doing. It
it's
is what it is.
it is what it is, but I think what they're trying to see is they're trying to gauge the they're trying to gauge the way the stock market's going to interpret the application of a tariff on a certain country for certain goods. They're trying to see whether or not the country is going to, belly up to the bar to try to make a deal. They're going to try and see,
Another name for that's condescend, Chris.
well,
Mhm.
Yeah, I just it's a
Depends on how
thing.
you look at it.
right.
So yeah, I think it's all kind of a game that's being played, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, we'll see we'll see
We're
where
all
it
caught
goes.
up in it.
Yeah.
We're all caught up in it. Yeah.
Mhm.
So
And we will have to wait and see
so
how
the
things
point of the
land.
article was that uncertainty returns, and the answer is yeah, it does. But it's
Yeah.
been there all. I would argue it's been there all along,
Yeah.
and it continues to be there. So
Yeah.
yeah, the fun goes on.
It's very, very, very true. And why don't we move on to things maybe a little bit
Yeah,
more happy, shall
something
we?
Happy,
cheerier,
happy, happy.
cheerioer.
More
I don't know.
cheery? I don't know.
More cheery.
Cheerier? I
Cheerio
don't know.
or anyway, they're an important part of a balanced breakfast. But the
Mm-hmm. Very
Apple
much so.
migration assistant, the Apple migration assistant.
Yes.
Larry, you were talking this up a little bit over this week, and you were saying, in some cases, you know previously not so good, but today or nowadays much better. Is that correct?
It is. And to be quite honest, about 3 years ago, the migration assistant was so bad. We had so many people here that I interfaced with a lot. Going to the Apple
Mm-hmm.
store, they're getting this migration thing. They come back home with their new Mac and it's got all their old Mac on it, and
Yep.
it's a cluster. And I have to be the person who straightens it all out. I wrote a letter. Actually, it was an email, and I'm sure it never got read by anybody that gave a damn. But I did send it to Apple on behalf of our club and on behalf of all the examples I cited that were honest to God, this migration assistant messed up this computer. But having said that, back then I would never have ever recommended it. No way. But
Hmm.
with the latest version, actually, I think it probably goes even back about a year and a half. But this current version that got recently updated is nearly, I'll say nearly, I think Chris, one of our co-hosts, will say it's not quite perfect, and I believe that, but it's nearly perfect, except with some edge apps and a couple of very minor issues. The bottom line is here's what it does. It will transfer all of your personal content and settings, all of the stuff that you'd normally expect to come over from your iCloud with documents and desktop anyway, but anything
Hmm.
else you might have on there. It also transfers, of course, all Apple apps. But the big thing to me was how well it transferred all installed Universal apps on a
Hmm.
couple of machines I did that were 5 and 6 years old, but they were running many Universal apps. These are third-party apps that do work with the M-series processor, and it rightfully did not move over the legacy Intel apps that won't
Hmm.
work on the new machine. Here's the interesting catch. Even if you had Rosetta, it would not do it. It said nope,
Mm.
nope, and nope. So it doesn't say you can't do it. It just put it on the I will not trans or migrate
Yep.
list. It does copy over all of the PIF files, and it ensures that every app that you have is configured as precisely as it was on your old Mac. And I think Chris will agree later that it really does a great job at that. I've
Uh,
recommended it
yeah.
to two, three people now, and two of them were literally 85 and not at all techie. I had no problem at all, zippo problem.
See,
So,
that's pretty
do
cool.
you guys have any recent experience on it yourself?
Yeah. So I've obviously, as I was talking in the pre-show as well, I recently made a migration from an M1 MacBook Air to an M4 MacBook Pro, and I had just like you said, Larry. There are certain apps that aren't going to make it, and I knew they wouldn't make it. And sure enough, I just got a brief notice at the end saying these aren't happening. This isn't what we're not moving this. And I will say, by the way, this has also happened when I've done upgrades. I've gotten similar lists as I've
Hmm.
gone through betas and
Yep.
upgrades into different
Right.
versions of iOS. So it's
Right.
very similar to that behavior. But I had one app, and we were talking about this in the pro show, Sophos, which is a virus, malware antivirus kind of app. It has a bunch of special permissions and requirements. I just had to reinstall it. That's one app, and I kind of knew that was going to be the case because that particular app has broken every time I've upgraded my iOS
Hmm.
version as well. So I kind of expected that to happen
Yep.
again. But my data all landed back where I had it. All my, I have a lot. I have a ton. Chris, you know this for a fact. I have a
Yeah.
ton of content
Oh
from
my.
the iTunes store and the old iTunes store, and from
You and me both.
Apple
Did you
TV.
did you
I
find
mean,
all of your settings were in all your apps were the way you
yes,
configured them?
yes. They pretty much came up exactly
Amazing.
as expected, and my content, the things that were downloaded were re-downloaded, and the things that were not downloaded were left open. It actually flagged them correctly and went through the process. Now, having said that, it took, as I mentioned to you guys, mine took a very, very, very long time, many hours to complete. I did it overnight, but it was doing it over the Wi-Fi, and it was doing it. Um, uh, a terabyte of data or more, well, about a terabyte of data. So it really didn't have a lot of room free on the drives as it was doing its
Right.
business. So it couldn't like cache a lot of stuff, I would imagine. So having said that, I am perfectly content with how it worked. I mean, it was a clean process. It went over well. I can't complain. I think that they've done a very nice job of improving this product over what it had been, and here we go. I'm more than happy
I mean, I also
to
like to do
recommend
a
it to
clean
folks.
reinstall occasionally too, but for the majority of the folks that don't have the wherewithal to do that,
Yeah.
this makes life better for them.
Well, the other thing to keep in mind, and we do have to kind of keep in mind, if we talk about these tools, we have migration tools for the iOS devices that have worked for quite a long time, very, very, very well and very cleanly. But iOS is a much more limited OS in a lot of ways. You're not going to sideload stuff in iOS. You're not going to the sources are always known. The data is restricted in these little sandboxes that Mac doesn't do quite the same way. So there's more challenge to migrating a Mac from one to another because the things could be in many different places as opposed to on an iOS device. So I'm very impressed that they've gotten this to be as smooth as it is. I really am. And by the way, there's no similar tool for Windows unless you buy some third-party stuff, and even that has a hit or miss kind of track record.
Oh, terrible.
So
most of them.
there you go.
Yeah.
I'm happy with it. It's great.
Well,
good.
It usually in the past it's migrated, your settings and your permissions and your
they copy
whatever's
your documents folder
and it does all that stuff really,
yeah.
really well. The concern that I have with the migration assistant, and we did cover this just slightly in the pre-show, was the fact that it really is, as far as the file transfer rates are concerned, as far as getting content from old to new, that little bad boy is just slow.
Well, it was for me too. Now, Larry had better luck with it than I did. I don't know why. Mine was slow, but it's always been slow. I mean, for years it's been like this. So
yeah, I mean,
when I've tried to use it in the past, so I'm not
this is
surprised.
Something that you should, start at about 9 p.m. in the evening, set it, forget it, and then come back 12 hours
and that's what I did.
And hopefully it will be done by then.
And again, I was happy to come back.
If it gets done right, that's the main thing.
And I agree. You've got to have patience with these things, guys.
Absolutely.
But if you do, and you leave it alone, don't screw with it. Leave it alone.
Don't try to rush it. Just let it go.
Make sure your network's stable at that time, and just go with it. It did a pretty dang good job. I'm really pleased with it.
At the end of the day, it may take 12 hours or more to get all the content, all the data, all the files over.
Depending on your drive sizes.
It's a small, you're going to use that computer for, 5+ years or so, whatever, however long you are.
Exactly.
It's not, this is just, and I know you really want to get off the giddy up and get to it. But at the same time, if you want it done and done right, let it do its thing. It's a small price to pay in terms of time.
That's
to
my
get it done right.
Too. And I did. I let it go. I left it alone. Boom, and it's been
good job, Elsa.
And I'm on this talking to you.
The only question I have for it though is, what if the new device you bought has a smaller disk than the old device, and you have?
Well, that's always the problem with these things, right? Because you really do have to think about that. But it does give you a warning if you don't have room to do what
That's true. And on their support article, they say that too. Yep.
Right.
Yep, it does.
Right. It'll probably go ahead and set it up in either iCloud Drive, or if you've got OneDrive or whatever, or Google Drive, it'll set the programs up, and it'll leave most of the content there, or at least it'll try and gag on it, and then you've got to go back.
Keep in mind when you start the migration assistant, it kind of does just like it does when you do it with iOS.
Right.
It kind of builds a summary of what it's going to do. Okay.
Right.
You know how when you've ever seen it do a file copy, it sums everything up first. That's what it does. If it doesn't have enough room, it'll tell you right then and there.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I think it does one step better. This happened on one of them that I helped the lady with. She had way too much stuff. Went from a 512 to a 256. At the end, it had a list with check marks in them, blue and white check marks. It says these are the things that you got to let one of these go. We can't go.
Right.
So we chose one. She had an extra profile, a whole profile on her machine that she didn't need. I said, let's just don't bring that one over. Turn that one off, and boom, the red line stuff went off, and down it worked, down perfect.
And that's all you got to do. But the point is, it does let you manage that process and that problem at the beginning of its thing, of its process.
And it's great tool for those who are awful at managing.
Yes,
that's true, Joel. You're absolutely right, and that's a scary thing for most people.
It is
not for us.
Guys like us, we're kind of used to setting up a new machine, and we know these things. And like for example, I personally don't have any of my files. Very few files that are on the main Mac drive. Like my main documents and stuff, but any of my photos and my videos are on this guy. So I mean.
I do that too, but I do that as a backup resource, not as my primary.
That's the primary for me. But
I will say, like you said, I wanted to see how this is going to work because I haven't used it in a long time. I've always done the manual backup, kind of like you were saying, Joel, and moving my files that I wanted to move, and keeping all that kind of like you said on the little external drives and whatnot, right? So I'm kind of the same way with that stuff. But I wanted to see if this process would work, and it worked very well. I was very pleasantly surprised.
And sometimes too, though, the main reason I do it is maybe my apps are in some sort of weird setting mode, and I just want to go back to
The
so
original.
that's that
Fair enough.
especially if I'm screwing around with Creative Cloud defaults or something like that, and I don't, and I screw it up, and I'm like, how did I go back to default.
Speaking of screwing up,
Yeah.
Well,
looks like
yeah.
the EU might be doing
Oh,
some of that.
Yeah, they
oh,
they
here we
they
go.
kind of are, they have fined Apple $570 million, all right? And
Can we say that? Can we do the Carl Sagan to that?
billions
Billions.
and billions of
Can
dollars.
we just
Thank you.
can we
Or
okay?
So we can
But
go.
if you look at that in reality,
there you go.
Thank you.
that's like $1.14 out of your portfolio.
Well,
For you
for
personally.
for Apple, since they're,
Right.
it's just over $500 million, but when you're a $3 trillion company, that's 1 trillion is 1,000 billions,
That's right.
times three. So they got $3,000 billion, and you're going to get fined just over $500 million. It's still big money, right? All right,
It
and
is.
the White House
And
is saying,
and
that
but let's
something like
step
this
back
is
and
not going to be
explain it.
tolerated. But
Let's remind people what the EU is complaining about.
yeah,
The App Store again.
Yeah, well,
Still.
again,
if you look at it on April 23rd, for a little bit of background for those who haven't heard this, the almighty self-proclaimed keeper of all things tech in Europe, aka the EU, levied a $570 million fine over its App Store policies. And
right.
Apple promptly responded with a big KMA, we'll see you in court.
Yep.
And regarding the fine, as I think Chris was going to say, that the EU says that Apple forces developers to sell their apps and make in-store purchases only in the App Store, with Apple taking their little 15 or 30% cut, and they don't allow developers to point to their own websites, blah, blah, blah. And second in the suit, the EU said that Apple doesn't permit iPhone apps to be sold anywhere else. Nobody was allowed to open up a competing store. So Apple's reaction to me wasn't anything out of the ordinary. That's what they do in the wake of any
Yeah.
fine or injunction. But the reason this one is different, I think, is our administration spoke up with full support for Apple. That
They
was
yeah, they did, which I
as
thought was
much as
interesting.
telling the EU, you boys have a long road ahead if you continue down this
Yeah.
legal rabbit hole.
Yeah.
So, based on that, what are your thoughts, guys?
I'm not sure they're in a position to do that, but it's interesting that they did. And it's going to be interesting to see how the EU reacts to that.
Well, what I think is kind of interesting about all of this is that um the like Larry said, the White House did step up, and since we are in it's a terrible world, if you will, right?
Right.
Um, right now, um, the current administration has a great deal to say about what the EU is and isn't stepping up for, and what they are and are not paying for, et cetera, et cetera, from a U.S. perspective. And so
Mm-hmm.
when this came, when they levied this fine against Apple, a U.S. company, the White House, I think, immediately stepped up and said, "Yeah, I don't think so," and a lot of that same rhetoric was being thrown back at them for it. But um, whether or not the White House actually has the ability or power or capability of actually doing anything about this
That's the question,
is
right? We
is
don't know.
left to be said, right? I don't know that they are going to be able to do anything about it, and
Yeah.
I could be wrong. Um,
Well, but anything they could do might there might be a retaliatory kind of thing. So yeah, How much do you want to escalate it? How hard do you want to push the buttons? I don't know. That's what it comes down to.
Well, I think what this is I think what this is all about it, and I don't want to get too political, but I think there's a great deal
Ugh.
of politics behind this.
Of course there is.
Apple is the electronic world's darling, both from a
or 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 horse to beat, depending on who you are.
Or horse to beat, sure, depending on where you're coming from. But they are the ones that are, they're very, very successful with what they've been doing. Apple stock is a almost a sure, depending on how you play the market, it's almost a sure bet in terms of at least the long game. You're gonna make money. There are some that will say that it's not making money the way that it should be, in terms of how fast you're able to turn that around. But at the same time, man,
so let me give you.
It's a thing that they really Apple is Apple. It's Apple.
It's big. It's big, and it's the whack-a-mole that stuck its head above the hole. It's always going to be like that. So,
but yes.
So they're the ones that everybody always goes after first.
Mm-hmm.
But having said that, let me ask you this. Give you a thought question here. So let's say that Apple decides to pay the $570 billion just to shut it up. Does that end it? Or do they keep pushing for the App Store changes?
Oh, I think they'll keep. A great question. Great point. I think that they're going to keep pushing to get the App Store changes that they want.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't a one-time always fine. Testing the water. That's
absolutely.
It's not a one-time fine. It's gee, here's a fine up till now kind of thing. Right. And if they don't make other further changes, there's going to be another fine behind it. That's what it sounds like to me.
At which point, I would seriously just go ahead and say, you know what? Maybe we're just going to take a break in Europe for a while.
Well, we've said this before that Apple, I think Apple was fighting with the UK, we said, well, then just pull out of the UK. I mean, let's see how long that lasts. We won't do business here.
I would like them just to say, you know what? To hell with y'all. And this is what we're gonna take a 1-year pause.
We're gonna take a pause.
We're just gonna take a pause. We're just gonna step back and reevaluate how we approach the European market, and we'll get back to you. You won't necessarily see the next iPhone.
And although I don't, although I don't agree with everything that all these folks are doing, I would argue that Google and Meta should take the same kind of approach with all these fines and fights against the EU.
Agree.
They could theoretically do that.
And I really wish somebody would have the
sort of.
Don't get me wrong. All right. And I'm not trying to be ugly here, but I really wish that somebody with the Stones would be able to go ahead and stand up to the European Union and say, you know what, to hell with you. I don't like the way that I don't like that you're constantly coming after us for this, that, or the other thing. You've been after us on this particular
and every time you
issue.
Resolve one thing, they come up with another one.
This is what I'm saying. You're constant. To hell with you. All right, I don't have to sell there. Why don't you go ahead and see how your constituents feel about all of this?
And that's sort of where I am with
you did this. All right, not me. You did this. I'm done. And just take a step back, take a pause, for a year, and see how they like it. All right, and you close down everything.
It wouldn't last a year.
I'm thinking the same thing.
I agree. I don't think it would last 90 days. All right, but my point is, you know what? Shut everything down. Shut the App Store down. Shut the sales down. Shut the stores down. Take
in the EU. In
the EU. Take a pause. All right. You can't get the services. You can't get the products. You can't get the service. Nothing. All right.
But then you're breaking the back of a lot of developers. I mean, it wasn't their fault.
Well, that's the challenge, right?
No, but that's where the balance comes in, and all you've got to say is, you know what, folks, if you really don't like the way that things are going, vote the current people out. They're elected officials. You don't like what's happening now? We've been we've been backed into a corner. It's not our fault. You want your services back. You want your App Store back. You want your hardware services back. get your politicians to change.
And my guess is the majority of people don't agree with this happening in the first place. So, they're all like,
well,
just want our app
there
store.
would be such a cry raising up out of the land of Egypt that I'm telling you, it would be bad. All right.
So there you
Not
go.
to pick on a specific country or anything, and they're not even in the EU. But the point that I'm making is, it would be so bad that I do believe that they would make a change. But that's just me.
There we go.
But
there we go.
On to potentially happier topics. Larry, maybe Larry, you shot around an interesting article this week again from our friends over at Macworld related to, will the iPad survive its quote unquote Mac over? Now, what is all this about, sir?
That's a great title for a story, by the way.
I love that title.
If you'll allow me a couple of words here, that's a question I think is being asked now by many, because over time, Apple has boxed the iPad into a place where it doesn't know what to do with the device. Our friends over at Macworld tend to think we'll see the demise of the iPad sooner rather than later. And while part of me agrees with this, I'm not sure, because why would Apple kill off a device, even one they don't know what the hell to do with it?
And they haven't for the last 15 years.
32 billion with a B dollars a year.
It's a lot of
billion a quarter.
It's a lot
That's
of
what they sell. And they basically dominate the global space for tablets. They dominate.
They do.
So supposedly, the answer to what to do with the iPad is simply to make it more Mac-like and move on. And there's a lot of ways to look at that. It could potentially go wrong. Personally, I'm in the camp of those who say what works on one hardware format will not necessarily work on another. So if you look back, the Mac has a windowing system that's evolved over time.
It has.
As the easiest way to navigate with a mouse and a keyboard, not a touchscreen.
Absolutely.
And Steve Jobs, if he was alive today, he would tell you, I ain't going to do it. But the iPad...
And let's keep in mind that predates Windows doing this, kids.
Yeah,
it really does.
Well, no. This is the iPad came out in 2010.
No.
We're talking about the Mac.
Oh, the Mac.
About the Mac.
Okay, all right.
The Mac.
Yeah, but the iPad can
back in 84, 85, yes.
And they got it from IBM and Xerox PARC, and they followed that model, and that model's worked very well for that form factor.
Yes,
absolutely.
Yes.
Continue, the iPad can use a mouse and keyboard as an optional accessories, but of course its OS still needs to work, with touch. So if it was all that easy to cross from the format line here, we would have already had a hybrid Mac/iPad a long time ago. So we didn't.
And we've seen the limitations of touch-based Windows devices already. We've seen what happens when you try to add touch services to what's basically a desktop mouse keyboard kind of OS. Right. We've seen that, and it's not 100% successful.
Not always, but I will tell you that most iPads, especially now with the latest M4 processor, at least in my opinion, for what most iPads are generally used for, all right, by most folks. It's I don't want to say that it's that's still that Flava Flav Jive phone that I thought, I joked about it being back in 2010. That's nothing more than a giant iPad or I'm sorry, iPod Touch, right? Because it doesn't necessarily have a cellular modem for data, and of course it doesn't do phone calls. It does data transfer, right? But most iPads, I believe, are way overpowered for what they do. All right, a lot of them really only do streaming media, or they do games, or they do
but the games can drive it pretty hard sometimes. The games can really drive it.
I could not agree more with you on that, because I bought an iPad Pro not for the processing speed. I bought it because it's the only damned iPad that would come with the keyboard I wanted. Period.
Right.
And that's it.
Right.
They
Now,
also have better screens, but that's a whole nother
Well,
thing.
that's true. You
that's
do.
true. That's true.
But it doesn't have a bad screen, the other ones. It doesn't.
No,
No,
not at all.
no,
Not at
no, no,
all.
no, not at all. Not at all. The thing that I'm concerned with, though, and I would like to see this platform be able to do more of, is more of what you would use a desktop style computer, whether that's a laptop or a convertible, all right, to be able to do. Now, I know that there are a lot of folks out there that are going to say, "Hey, yes, it will do that. It'll handle all your office stuff. It'll do the Photoshop, Lightroom.
Yeah,
It'll
yeah,
do all that
yeah.
stuff. Yeah, great, great. Could you please go ahead and pardon my French, unfuck the software so that it's a lot easier to use and it is a little bit more desktop like, please? I've wanted that from the beginning with this thing. This thing should be more of a touchscreen laptop kind of thing, at least in my opinion. Now
Yeah,
that's
I
me.
think, but
That's
I
me.
don't think, I don't think you're the majority.
You're
To be
probably
honest with
right.
you,
You're
I don't
probably
disagree
right.
with you, but I don't think you're the majority. I
I'd
don't think
like to
you're
be
the
able to
target.
have the option.
You're
All
I don't
right.
being,
think you're the target.
I
Yeah.
mean,
I'd like to have the
usually make
option.
a
Well,
switch.
one day you may see the split in a split in the iPad
I
market. If
think
you do,
so.
then it'll be
Yeah.
I
make a
mean,
lot more
it is
sense.
so portable. It's so I stuck it in my Sky
That's the
vest
thing.
this
It's the
weekend,
portability. Yeah, it's the
you know,
portability of the thing.
and I
I
took it
love
wherever I
mine.
needed
I
it.
absolutely love it.
It's absolutely fabulous, and it is
And
powerful as
but
all
you know
get
what?
out.
But even with the iPad OS being what it is and the way it's limited, I still find it to be probably my most functional device. Even that way. I really do.
It is limited. All right. And even
But
though
it's
it
very
does
good at
have
what
some
it
power,
does.
even though it does have some power and it has a great deal of capabilities, what really bothers me the most about it is I think it's hamstrung by the OS that's driving it.
And
And
you're
I
not
have from
alone
the
in that
beginning.
opinion. And you're not alone in that opinion, but I don't think that's the majority of why it is what it is either. I don't
You
think
may
it
be
needs to
right.
be that.
You're
But
probably
not for
right.
the majority of people. Not for the majority of people. I don't think it needs to be that. I think most people who carry an iPad around treat
Mm-hmm.
it as, I'm going to call it an accessory, not a replacement for a desktop, but an accessory. So it's something like, oh, I have to look at my Excel document when I'm on the road. I don't have to do a lot with it, but I have to be able to look at it. Or I have to be able to write a quick email, or I have to be able to browse a quick website. You can do all that very well with the
You
iPad.
can do that
So
with
I
an
think a
iPad,
lot
and
of
you can
people
do it
don't,
very well.
and it's
Yes.
not that it's not capable. I just think most people don't need that today. I just don't think they're looking for that.
And see,
The people who complain about that are the pundits
where
like you and I.
here's where I think you're wrong. All right. Because if they do need to go ahead and I just need to look at this spreadsheet just to go ahead and take a look at, see where I'm at with some of the data. And I want to be able to go ahead and tweak this, tweak that. I'm looking at this and I'm going, we really need to go ahead and do this. And you want to take some of that data and swap it around in some sort of a pivot table or
Yeah.
whatever else, I want to be able to do that with this device, and I want to be able to see the graphs and whatever
Okay.
not that come
But
along
if
with
it
it. And
didn't,
there's
but if
enough
it didn't
power
do
in this
that,
device to do that, but give me
but
the
now
means
here
to
you
do
go.
it.
You're blaming the OS for that, and that's not anything to do with the OS. That's the app and who wrote the app. So make sure you understand what you're arguing for here.
I think the app is limited because of the OS.
I
All
don't
right.
think so.
I think
I don't think that's
it
the
because
case. No.
developers are going to develop for the platform that they're on and use the capabilities that particular platform gives them. All right.
No. Here's what you're missing. Here's what you're missing with that. The release copies of Word, Excel, and PowerPoint on the mobile devices are more limited because you don't pay for them. That's why.
Well,
they're not the paid copies.
Again, but if I had the capability to have that split, I'd put the desktop versions on that device, and then I would pay for them.
But it's treated as an accessory. Again, it's treated as an accessory.
Well,
and that's
I think that's because I'm telling you right now, it's not the.
I think that's how they all view it. I think everybody's
you know
viewing
what
it
I got to agree with Chris G here, but maybe for a different reason. I finally gave up completely on Microsoft 365 because it sucks on everything except my Mac. Sucks.
Yeah.
Period. It does. It really does.
I don't doubt that.
And if they could somehow make those apps work on an iPad or an iPhone like Pages and Numbers do, they would
Yeah.
have something.
Well,
Yeah,
there's another
no.
piece.
Is it
There's another
Apple?
piece
Is
of
Apple
this.
restricting them? I don't know. I don't.
I don't think so, but there's
AP, is there
another
an
piece of this,
API
guys.
issue?
There's another piece of this we're forgetting. Microsoft, we all talked about this before. Microsoft is trying to move to more and more subscriptions. They want you to subscribe to a Windows desktop.
Yeah.
Absolutely,
That
they
they're
do.
going to
They
host
do
for you in the
not.
cloud. Yes.
They have no financial benefit to putting a full-blown version of Office on an iPad. None.
No, which is why
None.
I'm saying allow me to go ahead and run the version that I got. Thank you very much.
But you're not going to do that. That's what I'm trying to say. You're not going to do that.
Well, I know
because
I'm
they
not
don't want
gonna
you to do that.
I know
they
want
to pull it. They want to pull it off the desktop and make you subscribe. So you're not going to get what you're looking for, and
Well,
it has nothing to do with the OS. Nothing.
There's a
to do with
reason
it.
why we left mainframe style computing back in the 70s where it belongs.
Mhm.
All right. We don't support that and haven't supported that particular model.
That's how these markets work. They go, we decentralize, then we re-centralize, then we decentralize, then we re-centralize. We go to the cloud, then we push it back to the end
Could
point.
you make up your mind, please? Could you make up your mind, please? Because I'm getting whiplash from going back and forth.
Well, we've all been around long enough to have seen this several cycles of this already. So here we go.
Well, I get it. I get it, but there is just so much power in that device. There's so many different capabilities that are not being tapped. And
I'd love to see it too.
It's almost to the point where it's a waste of money to go ahead and put that level of hardware in that device.
Yeah. So the interesting part about all that, but it's not. And the reason I say that is because what that gives you is it doesn't give you power today, but it gives you longevity. It means that you can keep running the OS without losing features over time for a long time.
Only up until the point that the hardware manufacturer, in this case Apple, decides to support that hardware with an OS revision that'll run on it.
But they've done pretty well overall. They really have done okay overall. But I do think what we're going to see, but all of this aside, all of this stuff aside, we understand that. I think we want to sort of wrap on a positive note that iOS 19 and iPad OS 19 is going to take you closer to the middle.
Maybe
that's what we think.
It won't be a full convergence, but
it will not be a full conversion. I guarantee
but I would still like to see a version of Mac OS run on an iPad.
I don't think you'll ever see that.
Because I want that capability on that portable of a product. I want to be able to go ahead and have all of the capability because A, the hardware can do it. All right. B, because it's even more portable than a pro level laptop.
But I can go buy a MacBook Air for less than I paid for my iPad Pro.
Okay. All right, but by the way, we say that that it's capable of doing that. That is not entirely a true statement because in a Mac, there's a lot of supporting chips that handle things like the audio and doing the multiple audio streams. That is not in an iPad Air. So there are things that are not there. Just the processor has the oomph. The screen has the oomph. Don't assume that everything you would do on a Mac in hardware terms is there. It's not. So you're gonna have to back off on that kind of concept a little bit. What you're gonna get at the end of the day will never be pure Mac OS running on it. If it's Mac OS running on this device, it's gonna have to be crippled in some ways. They're gonna have to tone it down in some ways, no matter how you look at that. So I think what they're going to do for now is go toward the middle. That's what I see them doing. Good or bad, that's what they're going to do.
It seems so easy to me that they could just literally have, hey, I'm using it as a desktop, run Mac OS. You're flipping to Mac OS mode when you're sitting in the couch. Flip it over into the iPad OS mode.
But again, but you'd have to have different hardware to make that happen. What they have in the hardware today isn't going to do that.
Maybe. We don't know how much of the iPad.
Well, there's like AIO support that's different in a Mac than versus an iPad. It's different. It's handled differently. There's not identical. So we'll see. We'll see where they go. As always.
Yep.
But it's soon. We only have about a month, and we'll see what's happening.
And we'll see what happens. I don't think that they're going to. It's not going to. we really haven't been moving too much from iPad OS iteration to iPad
Well,
OS
I don't
iteration. We
know.
haven't been moving too much more
I don't know.
towards the
Stage
center.
Manager was a huge move toward the middle
Well,
compared to what we had before that. So, iOS 16 was a big jump forward in that sense. So we'll see, but it wasn't the jump that people wanted, but it was still a huge jump toward
And their
that
biggest
process.
jump ever was settings when they moved out of the
right,
preference page to
right,
settings. And
right.
Yeah, yeah, fair enough.
We'll
but that
see.
was a good move, I thought. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
I'm very either way. I'm very interested to see where we go with iPad OS 19. I'm very very interested to see.
Very
There's a
true.
lot of there's a lot of rumors out there by some very credible people that
Mm-hmm.
imply it's going to be a lot more Mac like. It won't be a Mac, but it'll be more Mac like, and that's going to be very interesting to see what does that really look like. What does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
Is it
but are
enough?
they
You
doing
know,
are they doing that just to satisfy people like Chris Spera? I don't know. Maybe they
Well,
are.
damn it, they should.
but it won't
Damn
entirely
it, Chris
because
sends them so much money.
yeah,
That's
but
right.
he sets us up with several demands. Yes, and I'll phrase it as demands that are not going to happen. So, will the ones that do happen, will those be enough for you? Probably not.
He's the man.
That depends. Let me just say it depends. It depends. All right. Um, it's a subject for another day maybe. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move us to our mobile Linux segment.
Good for
We
you.
Not
need to
stepping
Good
in
for
move.
that
you.
trap. I'm not stepping in that trap that you laid so
Dang
nicely
it.
out there for
Dang
me.
it. Dang it.
No, I say the
I work so
nay.
hard.
I say
I
the
work so
nay.
hard.
Anyway,
Okay.
so did you guys see? And this one really just kind of really just kind of chaps my my buttocks, right? President Obama, all right, former President Obama, who of course is an AI expert, um, says that AI is better than 70% of coders out there today. And in a word, I don't think so.
It's
First,
not.
first of all, I don't know where he comes off making a statement like this with any level of technical authority. Um, I don't see where he is a technology expert. He's never been a technology expert. I don't care how many courses or seminars you sit in on LinkedIn. It's not going to give you the level of
This goes
expertise.
back, Chris, this goes back to what we said years ago on this show.
Uh-huh.
Keep the politicians, whatever color they are, red or blue, out of technology,
They
please.
don't understand it. They don't know. And they're never going to. They're not technically minded. I've
But
said
but
this
that
over and
statement
over
that
again.
the statement that he made is an absolutely incorrect statement, and I'll say that because I mean I'm not a crack programmer, but I do know three languages pretty damn good, and I made some tests several times
Yep.
with SQL, Java, and Apache, and you cannot. Apache is the only one that comes close.
Well,
SQL is as simple as SQL is. It messes up it worse than any of them.
well, he
So
seems to think coders are going to go to pick an AI and say create a snippet of code that does this. All right, and the AI is going to be able to do a 60 to 70% quality job. All right, where the developer is just going to have to go back through and tweak just a few things here and there in order to get it to be a better, more efficient piece of code. Um, and honestly, I don't think he understands exactly how all that works. I don't see the language models or the systems are efficient enough, accurate enough, quote unquote, smart enough to be able to do a C minus to D minus job. It just isn't there yet. Will it eventually be there? Yes. But according to President Obama, and this is a quote, the best coders will be able to use the tools to augment what they already do, But for a lot of routine stuff, you just won't need a coder because the computer or the machine will do it itself. Um, so it may be that everybody, not just blue collar workers, not just factory workers, are going to have to figure out where to go to get a job. How do I get enough income to feed my family? Um, and while that may be, I think maybe 20 years down the road, I don't think we're there yet. Um, we may not be there for that then or even longer. What really bothers me about all of this is somebody who doesn't understand coding is already busy shuffling those jobs off to Buffalo. All right. And it really just it annoys me because President Obama still has enough political juice to be able to go ahead and influence folks in companies to be able to make more of an investment in AI tools to try to get an edge back for the U.S., leaving the U.S. blue collar or white collar worker out in the cold. And I think that's premature. I think it is it's disruptive, and I think it's dangerous because we aren't there yet, and I don't think that the economy needs that kind of a gig in that direction. But that's just me.
Well, but you got to watch one thing that we haven't talked about here, that we know that the US industry, when you talk about open AI and when you talk
Hmm.
about, those kind of products, they're not there yet. What we don't know is what's happened in the Chinese markets and how that's going to impact us
I
down the road. We
agree.
won't we won't know for another probably year or two, but they may be further ahead on some of this than we are. So it's hard to point blank say for sure.
I
We're
think
not there.
I think without massive copyright violation
Mm,
and bringing in the code that is needed to support this,
Oh, to
um,
train the AI? Yeah.
train
yeah,
the
yeah.
AI is really what's going to prevent it. You're going to have like your basic things, like for example, a standard bubble sort. Um, yeah, I can see AI writing that pretty efficiently
Yeah.
because it's a standard thing. It's been going on forever, so I'm sure it's going to know about it. But ask it to write something to work on Mac OS
Hmm.
with the current environment, whatever I forget what the Xcode language is called, Swift or whatever it
Yeah.
is.
Sure.
Ask it to do that. Good luck.
No
Good luck.
way.
I don't see it. I truly, truly don't.
The other thing it's pretty good at is just basic HTML. I mean, it'll build some really nice looking little websites, but I mean, there's a million products out there that can do that without AI. I mean,
Absolutely.
nowadays, nobody codes by hand at all. Nobody.
Well, only if you're in the mood for a challenge, but I
Or if you're
agree.
trying to do something with PHP and you can't do it.
Right.
Right.
But still, I think these statements are irresponsible. I think they're dangerous. Um, I don't think that he has the technical chops to be able to make that statement definitively. Not at this time.
There are some things that I would believe from him or any other person in his uh, chair, but not this one.
No, I don't care if he does sit next to Ballmer at the LA Clippers game. It's just no. But that's just me. Hey, did you guys hear about the latest stuff going on with the Justice Department and Google
Mhm.
Oh yeah.
over a potential breakup?
What says the Justice Department and Google battle over how to fix the search engine monopoly. First off, just because everyone uses it
Yeah,
doesn't make it a monopoly. There's a
true.
whole DuckDuckGo, go. There's Bing, and they all have a little bit of a market share.
Well,
Very
there's
little.
well there's a whole bunch of stuff that's still out there, right? I mean, not just
Right.
DuckDuckGo and Bing and Google. There's more than just three. There's a whole bunch of different search engines that are out there.
So the U.S. District Judge Amit Mehta ruled that Google had acted illegally to maintain a monopoly on the search engine market. How do you do that? That's what I wanted to know. How did they do
by
that?
by
how did
making deals with
he?
Apple. By
Right.
making deals with Apple. That's how they did it. That's the story
And
behind.
Well,
Firefox and pretty much every other browser on the planet that's willing to work with them. To
well,
include Google as the default engine. I mean,
well.
it's
What's really, really interesting. As a brief aside, I mean, Apple pays Google over $1 billion a year to be able to
Hmm.
use Google as a default search engine
No.
in
Other way around.
iOS.
Other way around.
Apple pays or Google pays Apple for the default spot.
Correct.
Yeah, absolutely.
Correct.
All right.
Absolutely true. Google pays Apple
And
all that
and
money.
and make no mistake, Apple could develop a search engine in the next 3 days, but they don't do that. That's not
They
what
don't
they
want to
do.
do that. All
And
right.
they've
No.
said
So
that's
they're
not their
willing to
Well,
business.
pay for
and
what they
there's
consider the best.
Yep.
right, and there's also so Google may pay Apple for that to have that particular spot of honor. All right, but I also know that Apple pays Google for the same $1 billion back for something else. I forget what it is. And so I don't. I know that they have to exchange the money to make this all quote unquote legal, but it really just kind of blows my mind. Um, and just because there is that transaction and the default search engine is Google um, on Apple platforms. I mean, it's not like you can't change that.
No.
You
yeah.
know, I don't understand
But
why.
99% of the people out there won't change it because they don't care. They get the computer, that's the search engine, there it is. I don't care. Let's go.
I don't understand why everybody's got their underwear in a bunch over all of this. What I don't appreciate from Google when you do a Google search is that the first page is really all either sponsored results or curated results that has absolutely nothing to
And
do
now
with the
AI.
search that you've just put in there. Those are the results that those companies have paid for to come up first. All right.
Actually, Apple, at last count, at the end of 2024,
Yeah.
Google paid Apple $19.2 billion to have that search engine
Billion
spot.
dollars. Yes. So
Billions. That's
yes.
a lot of billions. I
Yes.
mean,
You
So,
can
wow.
stick your
I
pinky.
thought it was only 1 billion, but it's not.
right.
Well,
This just shows you where the DOJ and our government as a whole really has no understanding on how technology works. Uh, Going to something like basically this is going to result in either them forcing Google to do the AT&T thing, which that didn't really work for
that was an
AT&T either.
absolute train wreck.
Right, it didn't work
It
for
screwed
AT&T.
up
They're all back
telecommunications.
together.
It screwed up telecommunications for more than 30 years.
Yep, yep. I mean, and that's the thing is they don't really understand how this stuff works. You know, they don't understand that just because everybody and their brother uses Google, that they think that makes it a monopoly. Well, it doesn't. It
Um,
doesn't. I mean, yeah. I mean, I understand, but
But
it doesn't make sense at all. You know, and I'd be the first that would speak against Google for a lot of things.
well, for a lot of absolutely, and I
Things that
think
are
I mean,
worth it.
well, I mean, we were talking earlier about how much, and we'll get to some previews of coming attractions in a couple of minutes here.
Right.
Google is saying that Google's officially been labeled a monopoly, and then they're not killing off any kind of tracking code. So you're going to be tracked. You're going to go ahead and deal with it. And I understand. I understand. What's going to happen. In the short term here. It's all going to go to court. Both sides are going to present evidence. Expected to call witnesses and big high ups from different tech companies, including
Chai.
Google CEO Sundar Pichai and Gabriel Weinberg, CEO of search engine competitor DuckDuckGo, as well as senior VPs from Yahoo, Apple, Microsoft, Chat GPT, etc. And and while that scorecard could and program could change, I mean, you're going to get folks that are going to be talking to things that the court isn't going to understand, and B, any jury that's impaneled isn't going to understand. And neither side wants folks like us who do understand all of this crap in any of those jury pools, because we will go ahead and see right through all the smoke screens.
Let's make sure we separate what we're talking about here. There's actually several moving parts here. Yes. One is the conversation was that one of the solutions would be to separate out Chrome. Chrome is a browser, okay? But the monopoly claims are not about Chrome per se. The monopoly claims are about search, and tracking and all the other things that go into making search happen and having it your default search engine, not your default browser, not your default anything. So when we talk about everybody uses it, make sure we know what we're talking about here. We're talking about Google search. We're not talking about Google Chrome.
Correct.
It's important to make that separation, because I don't think most people, including our politicians, don't make those separations.
Exactly.
We need to make those for our listeners.
We
need to make sure that they understand these are two different, distinct parts. The Chrome conversation is about. Well, the Chrome
20 people on the street. What is your search engine on your computer? They'll say Chrome.
Yeah, they won't know.
They will.
I agree. I agree. But the point I'm making here is it's important to understand that separating out Chrome is considered a remediation or a partial remediation for the search engine issue. It really isn't, but that's because the people making that recommendation don't understand. If you want to change the search engine and the default search engine, that's a different animal, different, irrespective of the browser you choose to use.
I totally agree with you.
We need to continue to present it correctly for our audience, for the folks that aren't presenting it correctly.
The one thing I don't want them to do with this is what they did with Internet Explorer in Europe. And present them with a choice of search engines.
See, why is that a bad thing?
Well, because people won't know. They're going to be like, just pick. They're just going to pick one. Whichever one's first is what's going to be picked.
Maybe, maybe not.
Or whatever, But
that's an interesting follow-up question. So that would depend on how they present it. What gets at the top of the list?
But they'd have to do this. Well, the thing is, they'd have to do this for every stinking browser that's out there, including Edge.
No, they wouldn't. They could just do it. They could do it at the OS level when you first set it up. Be done with it.
Yeah.
Is there a established OS system standard setting for a search engine? That's the thing.
Yes.
I believe that there is, and if there isn't,
there might be for Linux. There might be for actually, it's going to be more likely for Windows and for Mac OS. Linux, nope. There's no such animal. So I mean,
from my perspective, if there isn't, they can implement it.
There is a default search engine choice.
Okay.
On every iOS device, kids.
On iOS,
that's right.
On iOS,
but the point is, if there isn't, there can be at the OS level.
And here's the thing: if it's on iOS devices, it's on Macs.
And I guarantee.
Well, if Google controls Android, doesn't that speak monopoly even more so? Then, if there's no option to change it there, I mean, I guess you could argue they should have to change it there.
I mean, the thing is though, it's not a universally accepted standard on every single operating system there is out there.
Right. But there are understandings. If you buy a Google device, there's an understanding you're going to be Google search based. Right. Well, maybe that's a monopoly issue. Maybe you have to say no to that. Maybe you have to change that.
But I guarantee you, if the government comes down and says, "Okay, Linux, you're going to have to put this in your operating system," Linux developers will be like, "No, no, we don't."
I don't think that's what they're going to do. I think they're going to focus on the big stuff.
Yeah, I mean, but I mean. That's just my hope, is that it doesn't go to that. I mean,
I can't see it going to that point.
It's stupid.
Well,
yeah, I can't see that being the case.
just like our subject.
All I'm going to say is this: I like the idea of a radio button box that says "Choose your default search engine" at the start. All right,
at the OS level.
At the OS level, I like that. All right,
But that would do away with the negotiations that Apple and Google were doing. It wouldn't be
It
an
absolutely
issue.
would. No, it
Google would
absolutely
never
would,
pay for
and it
that.
would
They would
probably
take away
end.
all their money.
Of course they would.
Maybe
And
not.
they'd be right to.
Right.
But they'd be right
not.
to.
I mean,
Because
they're a $3 trillion company. Google's a
Yeah.
$2 trillion company. What at that point? What does it freaking matter? Come on, boys.
well,
You're
why
talking
do they
about
need to pay?
billions. You're talking about 1,000th.
Okay, but why do they need to pay Apple $19 billion if they don't get their default positioning? Why
Right.
pay them?
Why pay them? And that's all right. And Apple will be just fine.
They will.
And so will Google, for that matter.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think to kind of Joel, to your point earlier, is that I think, quite honestly, people are going to predominantly pick Google search anyway because that's the name they know.
That's
So
right.
that's the name they're familiar with.
So I don't see where
It's
it
the
matters.
verb they know. It's all not about the name. It's about the verb.
Yeah, exactly.
Verb is the word.
So,
There you go.
but Apple only gives you 5 choices. They give you Google at the top. Next is Yahoo, then Bing, then DuckDuckGo, and then Ecosia. Have we ever heard of them?
No.
I know
Well,
what they are, but
maybe in other parts of the world.
they're a tree planter. And you search for them if you're a tree hugger.
Maybe, I don't know. All right. But the point is, if there was something that right at the front in setup, which would be a minimal change that already exists in the operating system, right?
But why would anybody have the impetus to do that, Chris? That's what we're trying to say.
To make it all go away, because I am so sick of this shit.
I'll be honest with you. I don't use Google search as my default. I don't. I haven't used it for years. So I can't complain. I know. We've talked about this before. So
yeah, we have.
I don't. And the point is, why would anybody do it? I can give you a lot of reasons why somebody would do it. I can give you reasons why I do it, but I'm not about to change that anytime soon. But I get the concerns people have. It is interesting. It is interesting.
It is interesting. And you know what's even more interesting?
What's more interesting?
That we're going to come back with our Windows segment, but right after this brief message. Hi. This is Christopher Spera from iTechGear.org. I wanted to talk with you today about becoming a contributing donor to the site. iTechGear.org has been around for almost 15 years. In fact, our anniversary is just around the corner on January 10th, 2025. 15 years. Where has the time gone? I mean, I've never really asked for any kind of donations for the site. It's always been about me providing value to you, a site visitor or podcast listener. The iTechGear Weekly is now in its 4th year of production, and Chris G, Joel, and Dr. Mr. Larry McJunkin and I are having a really great time providing you with some of the best free tech talk available from time-tested original internet writers, testers, site founders, and professional writers and editors on the internet. I truly believe that our crew has some of the best and most qualified pundits and commentators on the internet today. And we're not hobbled by any kind of sponsorship or affiliated relationship or other time-bought posts. It all comes from the heart. Unfortunately, times are kind of tough. And since the COVID-19 pandemic of 2020 to 2023, yes, almost 3 full years, times have become increasingly difficult for small independent sites like iTechGear.org to stay afloat. I normally do this with a portion of the salary I make from the day job. But with the IT market so tight right now, it's really difficult sometimes for many to make normal household ends meet, let alone fund a site like iTechGear that might decide to bring in a buck or two. It ain't easy. If you find any of our content on iTechGear or from ITGW to be of any value at all, I would seriously appreciate you donating as little as just $1 to the cause. While we do have a Patreon site, it's hard to keep one website up, let alone two. And since it's really only me doing the work, our Patreon site hasn't really helped us at all. If you can make a donation to the site or to the show of any amount, I'd be forever grateful. All donations will go to site maintenance, hosting, podcast hosting, and everything iTechGear related. Donations can be made to my PayPal account at chris@itechgear.org. Make a donation. We'll thank you immediately on the next ITGW episode and voice our gratitude. I want to thank you. We appreciate your consideration, time, and attention. Now let's get back to the latest iTechGear Weekly episode. And welcome back to the iTechGear Weekly episode number 130. I'm just waiting for y'all to say something stupid.
We sure did.
Say something more stupid.
More stupid. There you go. Anyway, I want to go ahead and I want to move us into our Windows segment. There's not too much here, but I do. There are some things that I do want to cover. This first one, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to rearrange things. We're going to jump around because only because we were just talking about all things Google. Right? Yes. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move our only Google can run Chrome story up to the top of this segment. So go ahead, Joel. Give us the...
So Google Chrome General Manager tells the judge that only Google can run Chrome, which is bull crap. I'm trying to clean it up.
Oh, Marty.
So let's address this. Only Google can run Chrome. Now that might be true now, but it wasn't true not that long ago. There wasn't that many differences between Chrome and Chromium about 3 or 4 years ago. I mean, they were pretty much the same, and they had all the services. You could sync your bookmarks from one system to the other.
Mm-hmm.
Now you cannot. All right, unless there are ways around that. Thank you, open source developers.
We have ways of making you sync. Yes.
Right. Because it's like certain things, like here, good examples of this is I have a Pixel 5 that not Pixel 5, sorry. Raspberry Pi 5. I know, it's so close.
Oh my goodness.
But anywho, so there's certain things I wanted to do with Chromium on that I couldn't do because Google removed all that crap, like sync my bookmarks. But I found a way, and I was able to do that. Same thing with watching things like Netflix using the Widevine plugin for the secure stuff. So, so this crap that Google's Chrome General Manager is telling the judge that only they can run Chrome is just not true. I mean, now granted, yes, certain things now, especially the way things are only supported in Chrome. Like I said, unless you know what you're doing.
Right.
Okay. So like things like let's see, safe browsing, notifying users about compromised passwords. First off, I don't want Google notifying me about that because 9 times out of 10 it's not true. It's pretty horrible, actually. I've tried it. And all that relies on Google infrastructure. Well, it's like, well, I mean, does it? I mean, that's the thing. So, like, I guess the DOJ is trying to say that Google needs to sell off Chrome. Companies like OpenAI, Perplexity, and Yahoo still exists.
Yeah, they do.
They have expressed interest in buying Chrome in case Google is forced to sell it. Well, I don't see the reason or the purpose for them to sell it.
Well,
what they could do to make the DOJ go away is just completely open source at all. I mean, all the stuff. I mean, everything. I mean, the main engine already is. The main engine's already used by.
Well, yeah, it's all based off of
Edge.
Chromium, which is an open source based product, right? It's open source
Correct.
based platform, right? There are versions of, I believe it's also part of where Android came from, was from this particular project. It's all the code is related. It's
it was a different project, but
you know, the point though that needs to be made here. This is a continuation.
Government making decisions that they don't understand.
But there's more to the recommendation than just the Chrome gets sold off. They want them to also sell the collected data that they've been pulling from this. And that, I think, is actually the bigger thing, even though it's kind of buried in the story.
Yes.
I think it's actually the bigger deal.
It is. I do think that they did bury the lead here. All right.
You do. So to speak.
Yeah. You know, talk a little bit more about what you mean by they want them to sell the data, Chris.
Well, what they're talking about is there's data that's collected, you know, by your search engines and by your browsers as you move along.
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked about this. We kind of sort of hinted on it in the last segment.
Mm-hmm.
One of the challenges is that Google has tracking data that they were using, and they promised they were going to remove that, and then they turned around and said we're not going to do that. So all this data is collected by so Chrome as a browser basically collects a lot of data that they promised they wouldn't collect, and now they're doing it again.
Yeah.
So the question is, so one of the arguments is that they should have to share this collected data with their competitors.
Right. Now, you also need to know and understand one of the reasons why the Google ad business is so successful.
Right.
Is because they collect all of this data. And they use it then to serve up ads that you may have an interest in. From a marketing perspective and from a business perspective, this is exactly what they want to do. All right, because then you're more likely to click on these things and
buy this is also the same kind of thing that
are being displayed for you.
But this is also the kind of thing that makes people say, "Gee, you're a freaking monopoly." This is the kind of stuff that makes them go down those paths.
Well, yeah, so it makes them go down those paths. It also makes them say, well, that's really kind of freaking creepy, because I was just talking to my wife or my significant other about the thing, right? And now all of a sudden I'm seeing, you know, things in Facebook or X or Instagram or Snap or whatever social platform you use. I'm also seeing things in Amazon. I'm also seeing, you know, I'm also getting text messages now and email and blah, blah, blah.
I mean, I get the pluses of it, but I also get the minuses of it too. I mean,
it's creepy as hell.
It is very creepy. No question. Yeah, that's true.
So, you know, one of the things here though, related to the trial, Parisa Terabez was saying that Chrome represents 17 years of collaboration between the Chrome people. Trying to disentangle that is unprecedented. And that it might not be possible to recreate that somewhere else. Now, whether or not that's true or not remains to be seen. But
and I think they also went on to say something about like 90% of the code for Chrome, or for Chromium, has come from Google and the Chrome project, but since 2015, I think, something like that. So for the last 10 years, 90% of the stuff has come from Google. So that's why they're saying they can't separate it.
Right. So,
okay.
And in addition to selling Chrome, the DOJ has also demanded that they share the data, right?
Share the data.
Share the data with them. I mean, that just doesn't make sense.
With competitors.
Share the data with competitors so that it's public domain, right? It's open source data. It's public domain so that they can go ahead and
the argument
anybody
is
and everybody can take advantage of it.
They shouldn't have been collecting it is the argument. So they should have to share it. That's the argument. Right. Whether it's right or not, but that's the argument they're making.
Right.
I mean, just turn it off and make it go away.
I don't think that's going to happen either, but you know.
Yeah, no kidding.
Although I do remember back in the day, Chrome was the better browser because it was faster. It wasn't so bogged down with all the ads. It wasn't so bogged down with all of the data collection, blah, 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 blah.
Blah, blah,
Not
blah, blah,
that
blah.
blah, 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 blah. Yeah. And it really just
Okay.
something stupid. Go ahead, say something
Hey.
stupid. Anyway,
Every 5 minutes.
every 5 minutes, folks. I really,
Like a box of Cracker Jacks.
yeah. So what really bothers me though is that because it's now so entangled, I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know how they're going to
I don't
fix
either.
this. Because this is now such a freaking mess. And I think it got to the point where Google was actually going to go ahead and disable all of that tracking stuff, but the amount of code that they've got tangled up in to the way that Chrome works to actually pull and keep that and add to that data, it would require a complete restructuring of the product, not just a rewrite, a complete restructuring. So which is a heck of a lot more involved and a heck of a lot of a bigger problem. And I just don't know that it's going to happen.
Yep.
So
I don't.
but
Yeah,
that's just
but that's just you, right? Like I said, though, I don't think it's as difficult as Google's making it out to be. But anywho,
Probably not.
it may or may not be. But that's what they're saying.
But
Too
that's the
difficult,
claim.
too difficult and too burdensome on the company to.
It's interesting because that's the same kind of arguments Apple has been making relating to the App Store.
Well, they're also didn't Microsoft say the same thing about Internet
they
Explorer,
did.
right? It was it
Right.
was integrated into the operating system, and it
And
was
it's
too
still
big
there,
of a
by the
deal
way,
to
kids.
untangle.
We pretend it's gone.
It was. I mean, it
But
really was back
it
in the
still is, guys. It's still there.
It
It's
still is.
Pieces of it are still there. Even now,
Yeah.
it's still
Yeah.
there.
ActiveX. Ooh.
Yeah, well, speaking of more Windows things, have you guys ever seen the Windows Maps app?
No.
Yeah,
Oh, yes.
of course.
All right, it was one of the things that I immediately uninstalled.
Yeah, it's because it was born out of Windows Metro, which was the worst thing
Which
that
was
ever happened.
it was originally part of Windows 8 and the Metro and their Metro days.
2014 was not a good year for Microsoft.
No, 2012, 2013 was not a good time for them. Windows Maps came about because of Google Maps, and Apple threw their hat in with Apple Maps, and Microsoft said, well, hell, we've got to have a product. So they went ahead and came up with Windows Maps, and it never took hold. Why did it never take hold? Because they don't have a freaking mobile platform. Nobody is going to use them. I mean, this is equivalent basically to having MapQuest on your PC. Who the hell is going to go ahead and have a Windows tablet or more importantly nowadays a Windows 2-in-1 navigate them somewhere in their car?
Right. Nobody.
I mean, who uses Apple Maps on their Mac? Rarely.
On their Mac? No. The only good thing about it is, though, if I do that, that search will,
right. That's the only reason
previous
I use
quote unquote destination will show up on my iPhone or my
Without
iPad
a mobile,
and allow me to navigate
without a mobile
from there.
device, who needs it? You don't have a mobile device, who needs it?
Right.
Route
And
planning.
that's exactly why, it is now completely and totally dead.
Yep.
Good.
I mean, back in the day, I was a huge Microsoft Streets and Trips fan.
Yep.
Loved Streets
Which
and
was
Trips.
a
Great
really
product.
good application, wasn't it?
It was.
It was a good product.
I especially loved it when they started integrating it with Pocket PC. And like I went on, I remember I was doing some training trips when I was still working at the college, and I was making. I had my Pocket PC with me, probably an iPac at the time.
Yeah.
And what did I do when I was going to Miami? I loaded the maps on my phone, and I was able to navigate around with it. Not well, because there was no GPS on it, but I still was able to figure it out by just looking at landmarks and stuff like that, like we used to. But if they would have just expanded upon that, freaking fix Windows Mobile, which they never did.
Well,
they tried.
This is something that Ballmer can go ahead and talk to Obama about while they're busy chatting about AI too. All right. Windows Mobile died the death that it did because Ballmer didn't understand it. Ballmer is the one that killed Windows Mobile.
Truth.
Didn't understand mobile, didn't want to understand mobile, didn't think it was anything that would be of any account, which is basically the reason why he ended up getting replaced anyway.
Yep.
All right.
And exactly why the Zune failed too.
Yeah.
Because the Zune, they tried to make the Zune more mobile friendly with the touchscreen version, but it didn't really work.
Again, when you only stick your foot halfway into the pool,
that's right.
All right, you're not fully committed. All right, and when you aren't fully committed, you cannot succeed in a platform where you are not fully committed, where you don't put your resources. So it annoys me to no end. It annoys me to no end that they screwed this up. But
all they had to do was make Pocket PC better.
All they had to do was stand by.
It wasn't even much.
No,
because it was already one of the best mobile platforms.
What they needed to do was support their app developers. That's what they needed to do, and that's what they didn't do.
Right. Absolutely. It wasn't about developers. It was all about revenue.
Yeah.
And they didn't see it in
developers.
They didn't see it in the platform, and so they pulled their money out.
Yeah.
That's what they did.
Yep. And
I bought number 3. You were. Yep.
I was gonna say I bought in the Pocket PC at the time because I thought it was more powerful than Palm, and it was.
It was by far,
easily.
far.
But when they fell to number 3, if they would have pumped some money into the developer support, they could have maintained, if not grown, their market share slowly. That's what they could have done, but they didn't do it.
No,
didn't do it.
No, and while I would love to lament, this, for at least another 20 or 30 minutes, we can't.
We could, but we won't.
But we won't. But if you were using Windows Maps or wondered where it went, it died. It's gone now.
It's gone now.
It's gone now, so you don't have to worry about it.
But what's coming? What's coming, Chris?
Well, so interestingly enough, all right, from from our friends over at NeoWin. There have been references to Windows 11 version 25H2 in one of the latest Windows Insider Canary Ring builds, 27842. Now, we don't cover a lot of Windows Insider stuff here on the iTech.
We don't.
For a number of different reasons. There are a number of different code lines that are actually and builds that come together to actually make the released Windows version that hits the street. Some of the features that you see in either the beta ring or the dev ring or the canary ring or circle or whatever the hell it is this time.
I want to be in the pigeon ring. Can I be in the pigeon ring?
We'd love to see you there too. Don't necessarily make it to the actual release version. Some features are put in, tested out, and then pulled out for a later date, or they just don't make it at all. But we are seeing now references to a version of Windows called 25H2. This is not supposed to be or necessarily be a huge or as big of an update as Windows 11 24H2 was previously, last year. This is really more of a smaller enablement package as opposed to a full system.
Gotcha.
So we'll see. Microsoft is really trying to keep it to 2 updates a year. Some of this is more about feature enablement and trying to see what works and what doesn't work as opposed to actual upgrades. Part of the problem is that they don't have a clear strategy related to AI, and nobody really does. But a lot of their features now are more AI related than than most.
And subscription oriented.
So what's going to happen? I don't know, but we'll see. We'll see. No mistake-a-thon for them this week. Pulling maps out of Windows was the right decision to make because ain't nobody using it, and it didn't have and there wasn't any use for it. And then
why it lasted 10 years is amazing.
It lasted more than that. It lasted more than that, 12, 13 years, you know?
Yeah.
2014 is when it came out.
I thought it was
a long time.
I thought it was earlier than that, but
2014, trust me.
It's been around a long time.
I do.
Still been around a long time, guys.
Yeah.
It's still a long time.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. That's still 2-3 versions of Windows ago. So anyway.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move us to our tip of the week segment. And, you know, with WWDC coming up, there's going to be a lot of interesting stuff interesting changes that are coming to iOS. But one of the things that I think is important is being able to control your iPhone in such a way that if you've got it on silent mode, or if you're in do not disturb, or if you're in some way that, you know, you may not necessarily get the appropriate notification for a phone call or any kind of notification from a emergency contact. You know, there's a way to change that. All right.
There is.
9 times out of, you know, I have a ringtone selected that is not just the standard phone ring or the bump bump bum 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 that you get as the default ringtone from Apple iPhone. I've got a something or other chosen, but I very rarely, if ever at all, have my phone off of silent mode, and that can be a problem, especially if you've got kids and there's some kind of an emergency, which there always are with kids. In order to go ahead and allow your emergency contacts to contact you, and not have any missed calls, the first thing that you need to go ahead and do is open up contacts, search for and find the contact that you want to bypass the silent mode for. All right. And then tap edit ringtone and then turn on the emergency bypass toggle. This will give you the ability to actually have that ringtone or notification sound play for the phone call for that individual contact. And the fact that you can set this up as, you know, with individual contacts, that regardless of whatever mode your phone is in, their call comes through and you get the ring, or you get the default ringtone is I think important.
I actually do it a different way.
I've been doing it through a lot. There's another way that you can do this. Through oh God, what is it called?
Well, I go through do not disturb settings.
That's the D&D, yes.
And
yes.
I just say
Focus.
add these people and let these people get around all the D&D settings.
Yes.
That's the other way. That's what I've always been doing. But
yes,
I like your way. Your way has some interesting implications. I like that.
The biggest problem, though, that I have with your method, and I've been using it lately, is that, you know, I've got a set schedule for do not disturb, right? From this time to this time. All right. Every day, regardless of the day of the week, regardless of holiday, whatever. It's just, you know, between this time and this time, I don't want the phone to ring. All right. Unless you're in the bypass list, right? Unless you go ahead.
Yeah, but this would do that.
List.
But this would do that.
It doesn't do it consistently. I find that D&D, I find that there's a huge bug in the way D&D works, and that it doesn't actually, the schedule does not always activate.
Well, yeah, what I've done is, so first of all, I'm not doing the schedule. I tend to leave it on all the time. So it's, you know, noon until 11:59. So there's 1 minute where it's off.
Yeah.
But otherwise it's on.
Yeah.
And other than that time, it's always on, and this has always worked for me. So, it's interesting. I've never had any trouble with a call coming through that shouldn't have come through, and I've never had trouble getting a call that should come through.
I understand, but this is
for you, it hasn't worked. Okay.
For me, it doesn't work consistently.
Yeah, for me it does.
All right.
But...
Now, when I go and I have to, I go and the phone rings and I know that it shouldn't, and I look to see if Do Not Disturb is on. It's off.
Right.
All right.
But why is it off? I'd look at your Do Not
problem.
Disturb. See, mine doesn't do that.
That's the problem. I don't know why it's off. Okay.
Okay.
Because it should not be off because it's within the time frame.
I don't know if that's a bug or something you just got set up wrong, but either way, it's a problem for you. Either way,
yeah, it is a problem.
Okay.
But this is a good way to bypass silent mode and get those emergency contacts to be able to get your attention. So if you're interested in getting that, there'll be an article out on the website.
Awesome.
Go ahead and detail.
Good to hear.
Yeah. So
interesting.
I want to go ahead though, and I want to move us to our pick of the week segment. But before we get there, right? I want to remind everybody, all right, that our show picks are typically hardware, software, and other items of interest that we have individually purchased and that we actually use, and that we like enough that we want to recommend them to you, our growing listener base. These are not paid advertisements or items for which we have any kind of affiliated marketing relationship with. If they were, they'd fall under the iTechGear editorial policy. And Chris, do you know what that is?
Yeah, if you break it, you fix it.
No, it's not. If you break it, you bought it. No, it is. Hey, if we do have any kind of an affiliated marketing relationship or any kind of a paid advertisement, then we have to disclose that up front. These are things, however, that we just sincerely believe in, and we go ahead and bring them to you at the end of each show. Why?
Because we like you.
We like you.
Oh God!
Dang, we can never say it at the same time, can we? It's okay.
And I've left it to you too.
I
left it to you too, and you still can't get it.
I give you the cue.
But anywho,
why is that cue look like your middle finger?
I don't know.
So,
why don't you just say it for us?
I'm with you. Why don't you just say it for us?
Yes.
Anyway, because it's participation points, guys. Participation points.
All right.
So, Joe, you've got the pick this week. What do we got?
And Larry has participation points in other ways.
We're
going to get to that.
Mine's back as Costco.
Oh, it is? Okay. So,
whoops.
As we all know, iTechGear Weekly, we are frequent consumers of coffee.
Yes,
we love the coffee.
I mean,
we are.
We do.
Doesn't drink coffee on this team. Nobody doesn't.
Nobody.
I have long used the Keurig and the Nespresso Original line, which is their espresso only machine. I still have it. I'm probably going to sell it now because basically I decided I want to go from the Keurig and the Nespresso to one machine. And Nespresso has, many years ago, it's been out for quite a while now, since 2016, I think, which is the original... trying to remember what they called the original one. The Nespresso something. But it's their Virtuo.
Oh my goodness!
Nespresso Virtuo. The original was the Virtuo Plus. Then they got the Virtuo Next, which is the one I have. Mm-hmm. There's also the newer, but a little bit less features in the Virtuo Pop.
Sure.
So what is the Virtuo Next? Well, the Virtuo Next basically, believe it or not, this thing has Wi-Fi in it. But
a coffee maker with Wi-Fi.
Yes.
So is my Keurig.
So is my Keurig.
Thing.
Yep.
Yes.
It's a crazy thing.
And the whole thing is so that you can tailor your drink. So the way it generally works is you pop a pod in, and depending on which size pod you have, it basically will brew that amount of coffee or espresso. So it has the espresso pods, double espresso pods, lungo pods, one that makes a full cup of coffee, one that makes an extra large coffee, like a 12 ounce, and then one that makes a whole entire carafe. And all of these work in the Virtuo Next machine from Nespresso. Now, the one kind of negative with this is it really kind of has the same kind of problem that Keurig has, in that it has a pod. Okay.
Mhm.
But their pods are 100% recyclable. All you got to do is peel the aluminum foil lid off, dump the
A
grinds out.
lot nicer. I mean, really, I think.
Yes. In fact, the other thing that's kind of cool too is if you save those bottoms, which I have several saved and I have not purchased it yet, but they have a company by the name of Scutosi has made a pod kit so you can put your own coffee in it. So,
I just use a pod kit on my Keurig, so I get it.
well, they don't have anything like that on the.
Well, they should.
I agree. So I
Good
think
for them.
the main reason though for this, and this is probably the one reason why Larry probably doesn't like this, is when you're brewing the regular coffee, all drinks, doesn't matter which size you make, are going to have some sort of little layer of foam on it.
Little I could have dealt with.
Which I find enjoyable.
Okay.
Myself, Larry did not.
But now, let me interject real quick. That coffee was probably the best coffee I ever drank, the Stormio. I love that.
Yep, it was a good blend.
Good blend.
I've had an espresso coffee, and it's at least back when I was able to drink some, it was some of the best coffee I've ever had.
I agree.
You know,
It gives you truly on an 8-ounce cup 1 full inch of foam.
Yep.
Or skuma or whatever.
And I generally have to make sure that I make it in my larger cups if I want to put in like for me, I put some collagen in it from First Form. And I like to do that. I use one of those little frother whips to do that with. There's just not enough room in the regular 12-ounce mug with the 7-ounce. But I personally, like I said, I personally like the froth on it. I get why people might not. The espresso is quite good as well.
I liked it.
I've tried multiple pods. It comes with a fair amount of samples too. The only thing it doesn't come with is carafe pods or the carafe itself. You have to buy that. I think the one from Nespresso is directly is like $50, but that's only if you really want to make the full. They call it pour over. No, it's not a pour over. It's just a bigger coffee essentially. Yeah, and it's what I think 20 ounces or something ridiculous.
So, let me ask you a question. So with Keurig, there's a billion pods available at every grocery store in the world. What about what do you with these guys? Okay. How do you get pods?
That's the downside.
Right. That is the downside. Yeah, like for example, Keurig, I can walk into Keurig and get Members Mark pods fairly cheaply, like $30 for $30 to $40 for 100. That's not the case with Nespresso. It's a little bit elevated price wise.
But where do you get them? Because Keurig, I can get at the grocery store.
Nespresso, I can order them directly from Nespresso. Amazon also. You can find Starbucks only that I've found. At the local Meijer. So in fact, I just picked up. I think I got the caramel flavored one at Meijer this weekend.
Okay, awesome.
And I have that, and then several from. The only thing I will say is because I previously ordered original line in the past from Nespresso, and that's usually who I ordered it from for the original line, which is espresso only. The $10 coupon thing wouldn't let me use it. But
let me mention for folks who don't know, Meijer's is a regional grocery store chain.
It is.
They are.
So
Walmart
has it's very very Walmart-esque.
Yeah.
It's your Walmart Superstore-esque. It's a
sort of a slight step up, but
it is.
But basically yes.
It
right,
is.
and I didn't purposely check.
We don't have them down here.
Yeah,
no.
I know Kroger has the Starbucks pods, so it's nice that if I run low and I'm waiting on a shipment.
Okay.
I can run to Meyer and go
There's
get me
there's some
some.
place to get some of it. Gotcha. That's a
Yes,
good thing to know.
and the Starbucks ones aren't bad. I will say I prefer the Nespresso pods, the one
Okay.
from the espresso, and I'm gonna try this Scutosi thing and try putting some of my own. Specifically, I want to grind some Viking coffee and put it in that.
I admit a few years ago I looked at one of their devices and didn't get it because I was concerned about accessibility and availability of pods.
So I've got a what I'm going to call it's called the stainless steel refillable coffee pods compatible with Nespresso Virtuo.
There you go.
They're $24 a pop
on Amazon.
On Amazon, so I've got that in there as well.
And one thing I absolutely love about this machine is it takes up very little counter space.
I think it's way better made than a Keurig. I mean, manufacturing wise,
100%.
Very high quality.
100% better.
But you pay for it. But it is. Yeah.
Correct.
You do.
Original one they had, one kind of nice thing about the original one they came out with for the retro line was the tank could be, you could keep it in the back like it is in the next, or you can move it to either the left or the right side, which was kind of nice.
That is nice.
But I'm fine with this one. I'm going to keep it. It's gonna make my wife happy because it's gonna free up some space on the counter. And
sure,
until I get the Virtuo Plus was, I think, the original design, if I remember right. And it looks a lot different. Plus the Virtuo, some of the Virtuo line are made by Breville. Virtual Coffee and Espresso Maker by Breville, and which is one of the original machines, and some of them also come with the Aerochino frother, which that I'm keeping because I like to make a cappuccino. So
I have no idea.
That was Costco's deal. They gave you the free Aerochino, and they gave you a whole bunch of extra pods, all for whatever.
And I ain't gonna lie, that's not truly how you would make espresso drinks because steam the milk, but it's good enough for me, for when I'm making it at home, and it's easy and a lot less messy than making it out.
And I have friends overseas. That's what they use as an espresso for their kitchen.
Yeah, it's very popular in Europe. That's actually kind
very
of
popular.
It started. My office at work actually has. I think they have the Virtuos. So, but I love it. It's when I got it at Myers, where I got mine. The link I provided in the notes is for Amazon, and it's actually cheaper on Amazon than it was at Meijer.
Oh, okay, makes sense.
By about $5-6. So, although you can on Amazon choose the one with the frother for it's $189 versus $118.
Oh,
so
okay.
Get the frother with it. That's the one I would go with. Or you can use some.
Or Costco is $179 with the frother with the extra pods.
There you go. Yeah, and it's up quick. There's no wait time. Almost no wait time. Even if I first used it in the morning, I pop it in, and by the time I go over and take the rest, like my vitamins, the coffee's made. So I mean, I love this thing. The only thing I would make. Would like is if it had like a display on it or a way that I can change the temperature without doing I actually haven't quite figured out how to change the temperature on the phone yet. So I'd like
I tried to do it and it wouldn't let me. It was disabled.
Touch hotter. Well, you do have to update the firmware. How weird is that?
Oh, maybe I didn't do that.
Coffee machine. But anywho, but I love the thing. It has good spousal approval. So
there you go. There you go.
Really important. So have a go at it and let me know what you think.
All righty. So that, kids, is the show for this week. This has been the iTechGear Weekly, episode number 130.
Just say something stupid.
I'm just waiting for y'all to say something stupid. Recorded live Sunday, April 27th, 2025, live from iTechGear Central for Mr. Chris Gavula, Brother Joe McLaughlin, and Dr. Mr. Larry McJunkin, I want to say, hey, we will see you next time.